Welcome back to Dynamic Character Productions. We're back tonight for another exit interview for Survivor Monte Carlo. Tonight, Morgan and I and Lily are joined by our 13th place finisher, Elijah. Elijah, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I am enjoying the season now that I am voted out. I can actually enjoy it without worrying what stupid thing I'm going to do next.
That's totally fair. It's always interesting watching yourself back and not knowing what you're gonna say or do.
I'm one of the co-hosts, Ian Moorhead, joined as always by my co-host Morgan Jackson. Morgan, how are you?
I'm doing great. Uh, these exit interviews have been awesome. I'm sure Elijah will have a lot to say. Um, it was a really fun episode on Monday, and I don't know. I'm just excited to hear what Elijah has to say about his game.
And last but certainly not least, Lilly Petzold. Lily, how are you?
Good, ready to crack into it.
Good. Well, crack away.
All right. So, Elijah, what are your just general feelings? This was your first org, correct?
Yes.
What do you feel like you walked away from? Any regrets off the bat? Anything you're proud of?
I mean, I think there's a lot more in the regret pile than the proud of pile. But I think like going into the game, I didn't really realize it as I was playing, but thinking about it more afterwards, I just sort of wanted to like establish a baseline of like how I would be as a player, and to that extent, just like follow whatever natural instincts came to me, and like try not to overthink too much, and just like go with my gut and see um like to sort of establish some sort of a thing of just, am I good at this? Which I guess we'll get into.
Yeah, we will. And I think like as a watcher watching the season, you don't come off as a newbie to these orgs. You seem to pick up kind of how the games work, how to kind of strategize beforehand. You pick up that first advantage. You get into the high rollers room twice, which a lot of people don't get to say. So I don't think you give yourself enough credit in that. I think you accomplished a lot, even though your game was very short, or not very short. It was shorter than you wanted it to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about the high rollers room because you got to go in twice, right? So both ended up well, right? You got the advantage the first time and then you got to pick the second time. How do you feel about that twist?
Um, I I liked it as a concept and I would like it as an audience member, but having to choose, I mean, of course the first choice wasn't much of a choice, but like I think I said in my confessional right after I had to choose what tribe I wanted to be on, like that was more of a burden than just getting dealt something. Because as much as I didn't want to overthink everything, I inevitably ended up overthinking everything. And so the decision was, of course, hard. And as soon as I made it, there were regrets. But I'm sure there would have been regrets either way, given my position in the game.
Yeah. I mean, you're not playing the game if you don't walk away with regrets, right? But so a big part of this game was at the beginning, it was people have been calling it like one world. There was all 17 of you together. And then there was a tribe of people that lost their portion of the challenge. How did you feel like that affected your relationships when you're finally getting into a tribe, especially since you were on the winning side of that first challenge crack, so you were safe, but that doesn't mean you were not part of those conversations on who would have gone out.
Right. So for that portion of the game, first of all, it was just very overwhelming being my first game and having to talk to 16 people and just like not usually liking talking to people in general. And so having to reach out to people and actually talk on Zoom, like I can't hide the fact that I'm boring sometimes, but I can if it's, Facebook Messenger org. But regardless of that, it was a little bit overwhelming, but I tried to find some people to connect with. And when I won the challenge, the first one, and was on the safe side, I wasn't trying to be too pushy in terms of figuring out what people were doing on the not safe side. But I basically just reached out to the people that I was close with, and I was like, hey, like I'm here if you need like a strategic sounding board or something, and like let me know if I can do anything, and good luck. And so I try not to be too involved in that first one, um, which may or may not have helped me. Probably not, but yeah.
Do you think you had a hard time trying to step back from that first vote out, being that you could play a role, but do you play a role if, it puts a target on your back? What were your thoughts about that?
Um, yeah, I mean, I was reading I was reading John's comment on the thing and I was just confused. I responded to him, but I don't think he responded to me back. Um, but I really did not try to get involved in that first vote. I just I had the alliance of like the introvert alliance that Victoria and I sort of put together. And a lot of them were on the not safe side. So I reached out to Kyle and Victoria and Parker and a few other people that I thought I was close with. And I just said that I could be there for them if they wanted, but I really didn't really try to be involved in that vote.
So kind of going off of that, I kind of thought of this earlier when I was thinking about some questions I would ask you tonight. Like similar to Nick, do you think so the way you acted that first, after you had won the first challenge, like kind of rubbed people the wrong way? I think you might have been the only one who was trying to connect with or really do anything after they had won that first challenge. Do you feel like just because everybody could talk and read kind of like whatever they wanted to about whoever they wanted to, do you feel like it was almost impossible to recover from that sort of perception of you just right from the jump? Because in a tribe, like coming to a swap, if you were in a tribe first and the perception of you was one thing, you could go to a new tribe and change that. But because everyone was together at the beginning, it's kind of hard to do that because everyone has that perception of you. So do you feel like the beginning of the game kind of set you off on like the wrong foot where it was going to be hard for you to come back from?
Yeah, I definitely think like in general, the impressions that I made at the start were probably the biggest reasons why I was just viewed as someone easy to vote out for the remainder of my game. But in terms of like the specifics, like I didn't even know until just now that I was the only one who like even tried to reach out to anyone on the other side. So that's news to me. But but yeah, I think in general, like those impressions that I made were not beneficial and they were long lasting.
Could you tell that people had this negative perception or like not the best, feeling towards working with you, or was it hard to read?
I mean, I could tell that people didn't want to work with me, but I thought that was just like a personal thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then you finally get put into tribes. Who at this point are you wanting to work with? Are you happy about who you get put with? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so in the one world portion of the game, like I talked to a lot of people one on one, but like the only group that I really formed or that I was even a part of was the Introvert Alliance. And so I guess I just had all my eggs in one basket. So in that way, I was happy with how it turned out because there were four of us on the tribe of eight. So I was happy about that, and Victoria was the first person I reached out to in the entire game. I actually reached out to her during the first Zoom call. So I was happy as soon as those tribes were formed because I had who I thought was my number one, and then four people in my alliance.
Very cool. Skipping forward a little bit, I feel like your tribe, the first vote out was pretty easy. Not easy, but it was everybody came together to vote out Julia. So it wasn't too difficult. But the next vote with Micah, that is where the game started to pick up. And Mike tells you right before to play your advantage. What are you thinking going in? Were you gonna play it before, or was he really like the nail in the coffin to get you to use that advantage?
Yeah, so that's interesting. I think like the something that you don't see when you're watching the episode is like how long it actually takes between the challenge and tribal. And so like I had good conversations with everyone until like 20 minutes before the vote. And I actually like had a Zoom meeting scheduled for like 10 minutes before tribal just to like make sure nothing crazy happened with my alliance. And like the last 20 minutes before tribal, just like no one talked to me at all. And so like I tried to reach out to people and I got no responses from anyone. and like I was the one who made the Zooms a lot, and so I was just sitting on my own Zoom and no one was joining. So it was really that made me paranoid, because that was really just like my first like real vote ever. And so like if no one's talking to you, then I mean there's a chance that they're talking about you and wanting to get you out. And so I had an advantage, and so I just figured I'd play it safe. But and since Mike was the only person to talk to me in that last like half hour leading up to tribal, I was like, I guess I'll trust him, because who else am I supposed to trust right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, another thing you really, even I didn't really understand until I was putting clips together for the episode, was how short of time between when Mike talked to you and tribal was. Like, it was so close together that the Zoom wasn't even recorded. Like I looked through every Zoom between you and Mike, nothing. And it was just like one of those things where like everyone remembers to record, but sometimes in like the heat of the moment or a short Zoom call, you just don't do it. And that, I mean, that's totally fine. It was just, I was trying to find that clip of you two and him explaining it, because that would have been, you know, nice to put in the episode. But yeah, I thought it was, just remembering back to the game, I thought it was like a 45 minutes away from tribal, or a half hour. It really was like 10 minutes before the vote.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he hopped in with
I
you
remember.
and then hopped into tribal.
Right. Yeah. Like I remember tribal was at 9:15 that night, and like he was on the Zoom until 9:14. So
Well, I would be curious to hear if like everybody else kind of planned to make you feel paranoid and avoid you on purpose to kind of already push you in that direction of wanting to play the advantage. Or if that was just kind of a coincidence.
Yeah, I definitely think it's possible, especially since a lot of them are so smart.
I'm curious, you know, we saw you tell Victoria pretty much right away that you had gotten the 50-50 coin. Do you feel like, you know, looking back, was that a mistake letting that out of the bag so soon? Or I guess maybe like, what was your thought process during that?
Well, okay, so my thought process during that was that I knew that not many people wanted to work with me, so I wanted to at least solidify something. And looking back on it, I don't regret it, because people probably would have found out anyways.
Were you aware of how much people had already thought you had the advantage? Like, even I would probably say like around the Julia vote, I would say 4 or 5 people in your tribe had already suggested that you had it. So were you aware of that perception of you, that you were one to have found it already, or you would have been the person to have found it?
I mean, I knew I was basically like 1 out of 3 people, like 1 out of 3 possibilities of having it, because the only people really working on it publicly in the Zoom were me, McKenna, and Micah. And so I didn't like fully suspect it, because like no one really talked to me. But like when I was talking with Victoria, and she was like, yeah, I don't think they think you have it. It's basically between you 3, and they seem to work on it more than you. So, I mean, I knew it was a possibility, but I didn't fully realize.
Were you surprised in the vote that, I think it was the Micah vote, that Jonathan actually wasn't in on it, but he had kind of pieced it together that the votes were going on him? Were you surprised he wasn't in on that vote?
Yes, I was surprised, because I mean, he was one of the people that didn't like speak to me at all. Of course, that was everyone. Like 30 minutes before tribal, he actually popped into one of my Zooms for like a couple seconds, and he's like, yeah, no one's talking to me either. But I like didn't really believe him at the time. I don't know why. But I mean, it made sense. Like after that, after the Micah vote, we had a good talk, because we were the 2 people left out. And so like I fully believed him then, and that was when I got closer to him.
Well, to be fair, he pieced it together by Victoria telling him, and then McKenna also telling him right after that. So, and he did not reveal to McKenna that Victoria had already told him. And he just went to McKenna and was like, I know you're bullshitting me. And then he just told him everything anyway. So yeah, it came off in the episode as that he pieced it together. He was given the pieces. He didn't have to make them himself. So.
because that was probably my biggest question about your game. Was we see a lot of interaction between you and Victoria. Like you said, the first person you reached out to was Victoria. As Morgan mentioned, the person you told your 50-50 coin to was Victoria. But then when you get in the high rollers room, you say to Ian and Morgan that Jonathan is who you trust the most. Explain why Victoria wasn't your number one at that point.
Okay, well, she didn't tell me about like the plan to vote Micah and flush my idol, and then she also told people about my 50-50 coin. And then I also knew that she, yeah, I also knew that she, like the group that almost went to tribal at the very start was very close. And so pretty much everyone, yeah, at that point after Micah was voted out, everyone on that tribe was part of that group except for me and Jonathan.
So I'm going to ask the question. Yeah. And I want to ask why then go back to what you just had mentioned was the group that you had been left out. I think that's probably, and again, I think a lot of what you've already said, it was a lot of emotions, you know, you weren't picked. So you're already kind of having those feelings when you're going into this, right? Like, so talk us through a little bit more removed why you made that choice, because I think a lot of people, including me, think you could have made it a lot farther had you switched that decision.
Yeah, so I mean, I honestly think I was kind of screwed either way. I mean, given like the equaling of the variables, like if one tribe wasn't safe. But like assuming that I would have to go to tribal at some point on either, I think I would have probably been screwed either way, because I don't think I made a good impression on Ruken with the whole Kiley thing that was happening in the One World section when I was throwing out her name so hard, apparently. And
I did not know about that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Oh, yeah, Kiley mentioned it in the first episode when she said I was a problem. But yeah, like I honestly didn't think too hard about it in the first section of the game, but I was like, you know, like I was talking to people that for those first couple of days, that first weekend, and I would ask them who they talked to, and everyone said Kiley, and I just sort of pointed that out, and so, you know, but yeah, going back to the decision, I think like I was thinking more long term than short term at the time, which was obviously a mistake. Like I don't know why, but I was just under the assumption that I would have to go to tribal at some point, no matter which one I chose. And I also thought that even though these people just betrayed me, like these are the only people that I have trust in, at least a little bit, or like that I connected with. And so like it's sort of like the devil you know versus the devil you don't. So I guess I was more scared of the unknown of there being 6 or however many Rukens on the other tribe than, you know, people that betrayed me, but I know, and that, you know, there's at least a possibility that they'll go with the old tribe lines.
Yeah, I think your comment about like you saying Kiley in the One World phase, like I think a lot of the kind of stress over you in the One World phase came from like you were like genuinely complimenting people. Like I remember Shea, like you complimented Shea's mini game, and to Shea that was like, hey, why are you telling people why I did so well, or why are you telling people what I'm good at? And to you, you were just genuinely being nice. And I think the Kiley thing was another, I don't know who all you said the Kiley thing to, but from what I recall, it was another thing like, hey, Kiley's playing, like Kiley's really social, which everyone was saying. It just, for some reason, it stuck with you. Like Elijah's saying this, or someone went back and told Kiley. So yeah, I just think it's so hard to kind of maneuver your words in a way that like doesn't like leave a mark on people or doesn't put a bad taste in someone's mouth, even though you're not trying to do that. And that's just one of the harder parts about this game. You really have to think on your feet. You can't look away from the camera for too long. You can't turn your camera off. That's suspicious. You just got to answer and hope the words are in the right order. So
Yeah. It's interesting too about Kiley, because I feel like it all kind of connects the dots, right? Because we see Mike in the past couple episodes be like, I want Elijah out. I want Elijah out. You know, unbeknownst to everybody in the game, him and Kiley are like best buds, had played together before. Like they had the one world situation to kind of talk together. If you had known that Kiley and Mike were so close, do you think you still would have chosen going back to your old tribe? Or did that kind of tilt the seesaw, I guess? If you had dirty knowledge, would you make a different decision?
I think at that point, if I knew Kiley and Mike were close, well, I didn't even know that people were saying that I was throwing Kiley's name out, so I don't think that would have affected it unless they were on the same tribe. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I think those were most of my questions. I don't know if you guys have any, or if you want to hop over to Facebook.
The other question I had, and this wasn't super in the episode, but I know that like the people on Serpone, the new Serpone, figured out the clue to the new 50-50 coin, the bottle clue, that it was coined. And like figured out that it was down between two answers. And I believe, Elijah, you knew that it was between 6 or 7, right? But you chose to not go for the advantage. Why is my question? I mean, you had to, I feel like in talking with you now, like you knew you were not in a great position, even though you were going back to like majority Serpone, right? These were people that had previously left you out of a vote. I feel like at that point you kind of had nothing to lose, right? Even though sure there was the possibility of a disadvantage, but I guess I'm curious your thought process there.
Yeah, I mean, and this is like something that I like have learned throughout, playing more orgs, because like the first time you play, it's all an enigma. And so looking back on it, I'm just like wondering why I did a bunch of these bad decisions. But for some reason during that round, I just had this this inexplicable focus on the long term for no reason, and not like the David Sampson kind of long term, like cocky long term. I was just like if I have any chance to win this, like I can't like be doing all this crazy stuff in the pre-merge. And so I was like, this time, it'll be a test. Like I'll see if my relationships are good enough to get me through. And just like I said it like 2 or 3 times during that round. I was just like, yeah, like I really need to lay low this round. And so like I guess I just got into my head about that, and I was like, okay, can't go for the thing. And I mean, if it was like 100% chance at an advantage, I would go for it. But for some reason, just like the psychological, like even though I had nothing to lose, it was still like 50% chance of getting something, and even then it's a 50-50 coin, so 25% chance of being safe. I was just like, nah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I thought it was super interesting going back to your first 50-50 point, and then the decision you made the second time in the high rollers room. Like the first time you wanted your choice, you got it. You got final 5 for your 50-50 coin deadline. And then the second time you also got your choice. But I remember sitting in that room when you were making your choice, and we were not in there for 30 seconds. We were in there for 5 to 10 minutes of you. Morgan and I said nothing. You just talked out loud of what you were going to do and the pros and cons of each going to Serpone or to Ruken. And then, yeah, I just think also didn't show up in the episode, like how long you were really in there making that decision. But I appreciated that you really, I mean, even though it wasn't necessarily the best decision, you really sat there and thought it all out and at least had some sort of reason in the moment, reason why to go back to Serpone. And I think the decision not to go for the advantage in the position you were in was actually a good one. I think that if you had gone for it, people would have found out, and then they would have trusted you even less than they already did. And if you had made it past this vote, you could have gained something. But again, yeah, I think what you said about playing in your first game, you kind of just do stuff. And then in your future games, it's a little easier to pick and choose and make certain decisions. So,
Yeah.
All right, we ready to take some Facebook questions?
Yeah.
All right. First question from Alex Trias. Knowing what you know now, would you have changed your decision on which tribe to join, or would you have always went to the tribe that had the most of your original tribe on it?
I mean, knowing that I got voted out immediately, I would change my mind.
That's fair.
yeah.
It would have been interesting, you know, especially if you did have the connection with Jonathan that you thought. I feel like it would not have been impossible for you and Jonathan to have kind of a similar situation that, you know, we saw Parker and Margaret. They were on the chopping block, and ultimately Serpone voted out one of their own in you. I think it's possible that we could have seen, you know, you guys survive and them end up voting out Will, right? Because kind of similar dynamics, almost in a way mirrored. Who knows? You never know.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, I think like what turned me off on that is like I didn't even know that Jonathan like wanted to keep me around. Like he didn't even tell me that really. So I was like just finding out in the episodes that he wanted to keep me, even if it was for his own nefarious reasons. But you know, and then I also didn't really, for some reason, I thought that Will was like fully ingratiated back into that group. Like I knew he was left out of that vote, but I think it was like because of the schoolyard pick. I think Andrew picked him, but like he was not like picked last out of his people by any means. And so for some reason that like for me, I was just like, oh, like he's like totally in with them. And especially since like they were all winning so much, like I figured that they would have a really strong chance of just going tribe strong. And I knew that Jonathan would be able to throw me under the bus much more effectively than I would be able to throw him under the bus. So I that's why I thought I would be screwed if I went over there too.
You talk about the game like very well. I totally understand your logic and your train of thinking when you share the decisions that you made. So it's fun hearing your full side of the story. All right, next question from Greg. You were such a fun character, and I could see the beginnings of a great villain brewing. Knowing that you've gone on to win another org, congrats, by the way. What did you learn from your time in Monte Carlo in order to win that game?
Yeah, let's see. I think oh gosh, I even read this question on Facebook and I thought about it and I forgot everything I was going to say. But I think just going into the game after this one, of course, it was like a much different format because like everything was on Zoom for this. Then of course you had like the crazy one world thing at the start. But I think my main takeaway was just to keep my options open, and obviously not just that, but in order to be able to do that, I would have to have the social game and the connections to be able to have multiple people who want to work with me. I mean, anything was going to be an improvement over the zero from this game, but I think like going into game, of course, I tribal on my tribe, and so I quickly got into a majority alliance. And then on my swap tribe, I was able to talk my way out of getting voted out somehow on that one pre-merge tribal that I was at. And so I had allies from my swap tribe and from my original tribe, and I was actually able to utilize both of them to get further. So I think that's my main takeaway from this.
Awesome. All right, next question is from the winner of Survivor Exile Island that Lilly played with, Alex Cousins. Who did you feel was your number one in the game? I know you've kind of already talked about this, but
yeah, well, I mean, for the first half of my game, I thought it was Victoria, and even to this day, I'm still confused on whether she wanted to work with me or not. I think I believe her when she says she wants to work with me, and we'll get to her question later. But I think it was just like, and this is something that was even said in the cast assessment way back when. But like people said that I would probably be good if I paired up with someone who was really talkative or like a power player. Um, and so I think my choice to like pair up with someone who was a lot like me was, first of all, it was just natural, and it was like, you know, it's, I guess you're more likely to get in an alliance with someone you're close with, but in the long term, it would have been more beneficial if I paired up with someone who like had more agency in the game, because like hypothetically, if everyone still wanted to vote me out, but I was number ones with like Mike or something, then he would probably do more things to save me. So that being said, in the first part of the game, Victoria, and then like when she let out all my secrets and you know wanted to vote me out, then it turned into Jonathan because he was the only other person on the outs of the Micah vote.
I think I can speak for Victoria that she did really want to work with you, but it was when everyone was coming to her and being like, I'm not so sure I trust Elijah. I think finally it just broke her and was like, I don't know if I stay too close to Elijah, maybe it won't work out. So for me, so again, I think like Jonathan, her own like nefarious reasons for that similar decision, but
Yeah, I was just about to say the same thing that Ian did. I really do think that Victoria genuinely wanted to work with you. I think that watching her play, she is very much survival based in her gameplay, right? Just making it to the next round, not being the one voted out. So I think when she saw that you were being targeted, it was like her survival instincts kind of kicked in, and she had to cut ties with you a little bit, even if she didn't want to. But all right, so here's the confusing John question. What were your motivations during the initial one world portion of the game? It seemed as if your insistence on being in on the plan painted a target on your back from the offset. What could you have done differently to still be part of the plan, yet keep the target off yourself?
Yeah, and I mean, go like before this, I guess I didn't know that I was like the only one to reach out to people on the other side. And so like I really thought that I was doing like less than the average to like stay informed on the other side. I don't think I was insistent. I really just like I really did just like send one text to each of like maybe 5 or 6 people, and just I was just like, hey, like I'm here if you need me. But I guess that was a lot more than other people, and so that was just something that made me stick out at the start, and you never want to stick out at the start.
another fun fact, Kyle and Mike have both told me that I think it was probably, you mentioned it, but probably this text that you sent out, Kyle and Mike got on a Zoom and read the text from you together, like synchronously read the text. Like it was like copied and pasted. Like I remember them saying something about like a strategic sounding board, something that like you had said to them. So I really don't think you did that much, but everyone else like took the night off and like did literally nothing. Which at any other stage in the game hurts those people and probably doesn't happen. But just because, I mean, because even after like your tribe wins immunity at the first or second tribal challenge, like you're still meeting afterwards and talking something game related at least. But yeah, I thought that was.
Mike's probably one of the worst people to have against you, because he will throw it all out in the open and stir stuff up to get the chaos going. So it takes is one little thing and he can blow it way out of proportion, I think.
Right. I mean, the thing was like I made pretty much all the Zooms. Funnily enough, until like the round was voted out, people suddenly wanted to make Zooms for me. But I like when I was uploading them to the drive, like I numbered them, so I would just like say the person who I was with and then a number at the end. And I actually had the most Zooms with Mike, because like I just like could tell that like he's a very good liar, and so like half the time I would like really believe that he wanted to work with me, and then half the time like I would hear from somewhere else like, oh, like he's against you, he doesn't want to work with you. And so like I spent so much time trying to get him to trust me. And like even the message at the start with the like in the one where like I sent those to Kyle and Mike because I wanted to work with them. And it seemed to have the opposite effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting too. You mentioned it about your Zooms with Mike. I thought it was very interesting that you had 9 Zooms with Mike and only 6 with Victoria. I thought that was surprising to me. And I watched the Zooms as they come in live during the season, and I forgot all about that because there was like 4 in that last round where you were just like on for 20 minutes with Mike and then off, and then a couple hours later back on for 20 minutes again with Mike. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like he was really proactive in like wanting to talk to me, even if it was to like, get me to do things for his benefit and get me voted out. But like he was one of the only people that reached out to me more than I reached out to them. So.
All right. Next question is from another Exile Island alum, Michael Zucker. At the tribal before the swap, was your reasoning for playing the 50-50 coin more so because you were thinking votes would come your way, or because you knew people knew you had it and wanted to play it to get the target off your back, or was it a bit of both? I mean, we kind of already discussed this question, but is there anything more that you feel like you haven't said about your 50-50 coin play?
I mean, besides what I've already said, I think just like the fact that it was a 50-50 coin and not an idol, I think encouraged me to play it more because like in terms of like an idol versus a 50-50 coin, in the perception of other people, it's like pretty much the same, like, oh, he has an advantage, let's vote him out. Or like, let's get him to play it. Like it would have been the same with an idol. But for me, it's only half as effective. And you saw that it wasn't even safe when I did play it. So I think that might have played a little bit into it, just like, the risk versus reward of holding on to it was a little bit less because it was 50-50 instead of an idol.
Yeah, I guess you answer or giving that answer makes me think of just asking your perspective on like kind of the 50-50 coin as an advantage itself. Like, do you think, like, did you like that aspect of it? Obviously, like it fit with the theme. That was our reasoning behind it. And it's fun to do something a little different. But how do you think it affects overall the season? Or I don't know, do you think the game would have been different if there were, a bunch of idols out instead of 50-50 coins?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I might be a little biased, but I would have much rather have had idols in this season. I think, especially with the amount of work you guys made us do to get those things, I would have appreciated it if they were idols. I know about the theming and stuff, and that's fine. But like, I think the 50-50 coin has an advantage itself, even in Real Survivor. It was never one of my favorites. Because I don't know, it's like introducing luck into something that maybe doesn't need it as much. Like I like the rock draw luck side of it because you can play around it and stuff. But I think for this game, I would have liked idols, and so like if the actual advantage is only effective 50% of the time, then it's might not even be worth it to go for it.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts on the advantages. I do appreciate it. All right. Our last question is from your maybe number one ally, Victoria. She said, I enjoy playing the game with you and intended to work with you long term, but I didn't think I had the influence to change the vote. Was there someone on Noose or Pwn that you think would have helped you stay if you built a better relationship with them?
Yeah, I think, well, what's interesting is like I met with Victoria right after the new tribes came out, or right after I joined the tribe at least. And one idea that she floated to me was actually like, and she said it in her confessional too, but in her confessional it was like, oh, if this happens, then maybe I'll try it. But she like almost hard pitched it to me as soon as we got into those tribes. But that idea was to like, us two to work with Parker and Margaret to flip the power. And I was definitely down for that. But she actually told me a couple hours after, she was like, yeah, let's just stick with tribal lines for this vote. And so it was at that point where I was just like I knew like either like she didn't want to work with me and was about to vote me out, or like, you know, she was just sort of like casting me aside. But I think the damage that was done before that was too much to overcome to like save myself with any of the other Serpone members, because like you saw in the episode that like Mike, McKenna, and Kyle were more adamant about getting me out than even the Ruken members. And they were the ones on the line. And I had pretty good conversations with Parker and Margaret. So I think like I definitely could have been more proactive in trying to facilitate that flip. But I just really wanted to be passive that round and try to get by. But there were definitely a lot of things I could have tried. So yeah, I think like the people that came from Old Serpone were too set on voting me out for me to do anything about it. I was thinking about just like full on like you know, like standing on the stump at tribal council and just not at tribal council, but like before, and just like saying, like pledging my loyalty to them. But I was like, you know, like they're smart enough. They'll know that like I won't flip on them, but apparently they thought I would. But you know, like I was not one of the more talkative people out there. And so I thought that they would think that since they were the only people that I, you know, were with and was talking to, that I would never flip on them, which I would not have. So I think that's another thing that I could have done. But once again, I was just like set on being passive that round. I would just put my trust into them, and it didn't work out.
Well, I appreciate that you were, you know, playing to win, right? You had that like, I want to win mindset. And I do think that was probably, you know, as far as having win equity was the right strategy, right? You had a lot of attention on you. And if, you know, you had been able to make it through that round, you would have been in a way better position moving forward. But hindsight's always 2020. Especially in Survivor.
Especially in Survivor.
All right, that's all we got from the Facebook people.
Okay. We do like to ask a couple questions at the end. The first is, if you could sum up your game in one word, what would it be and why?
I would just say inexplicable, because looking back on it, I have no idea why I made a lot of those decisions. And like I came up with reasons afterwards to justify what I did, but during the game, it was a lot of just like instincts, and like when I wouldn't have been able to explain my decisions like at the time.
Yeah, I think that's a good word. And then I know Ian has a question.
Yep. My question this season is, who from the cast up until this point in the game has impressed you the most? Could be from your tribe, or from Ruken, or from Ruken 2.0.
Yeah, well, I mean, given the fact that I didn't really talk to much of them, I'll choose sort of two people from my own tribe. Mike surprised me in like how good of a liar he was, and like he definitely played me a lot. But like I could also like tell that it was like I could tell that he was like trying to come off as a villain, and like I knew that he probably like wouldn't like ever win. And so like he impressed me with like how good of a liar he was and like how good of a player he was. But like at the same time, like through that, I sort of knew that it like maybe his like long-term win equity wouldn't be good. Can't compliment Mike too much. And then Jonathan also really surprised me, as I'm sure he surprised a lot of people. He was just like a very calming presence, and like also really good strategically. And like even through the episodes, there's just like a lot of strategy that like people don't really talk about a lot, and pretty innovative stuff from him. So those are the two people.
Yeah, I think those are two pretty safe answers based on, you know, what we've seen in the episodes. We've seen Serpone a lot. We've seen Mike and Jonathan kind of be out front, but Mike obviously way more than Jonathan at this point with how he's playing the game. So yeah, I think those are two good selections.
Mm-hmm.
Elijah, any last thoughts that you would like to add? They can be constructive if you'd like the 50-50 coins, but
Oh yeah, I do want to mention that I would have guessed number 7 on the thing.
So
Because
you
I was
would have
definitely
lost.
thinking, about it, so I would have lost anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know. This was such an interesting org to have as my first one, especially like, and not just because of the format and stuff, which is crazy enough already, but like there were so many things that happened to me and my game that were just like so out of the norm of what Survivor usually is, so that it was sort of hard to like if this were a game, if this were like my 5th game out of like 10 or whatever, like it would be an outlier, and so it's such a weird place to start. But I think I learned a lot playing it, in terms of like, going to play other orgs, but also just like, life.
And you put it to good use. You put it to good use too, like Morgan read from Greg's question. I mean, you've won a game since our game was over, and it really hasn't been that long. So yeah, hats off to you for not only winning, but for taking something from a game that you didn't win and then using it for another game. We love when DCP alum win anywhere. So
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
because only one person can win this game. But Morgan, Lilly, any last things to add for Elijah?
I mean, just overall, it was very insightful to hear your thoughts, hear you break down your game, and you're obviously very intelligent and can think through things very well. So it's no surprise to me that you went off and won another game. So thanks for playing, and thanks for talking with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, tomorrow night you can catch us for episode 6 of Survivor Monte Carlo. And then, as always, our exit interview with that voted out Castaway will be on Saturday. And our recap, who I don't know the guests for, will be on Sunday with Alex Trias. But we hope to keep having you here at DCP, and we'll see you next time.